Hello. Good
Howdy,
morning.
everyone.
Good
Good morning,
afternoon.
everyone.
Good morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
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 Afternoon.
Afternoon. Good afternoon, TN.
GM.
How's everyone doing?
I'm good. I'm energized. This is exciting. How are
5
you?
o'clock in the morning.
It feels like we just had the town hall.
No
Haven't
energy here.
haven't we had just the conversation a couple of minutes ago? Went to sleep, woke up, and just it continues. Time travel.
It's non-stop town hall, it seems. Yeah.
I'm noticing a pattern. I don't sleep well Wednesday nights. I go to bed so fired up from the town hall that I can't relax.
Just a brief question. So this workshop would be like the same as the second one, which would be later today. Yes.
Yes, that's
Basically,
the plan.
there is no need to visit the second one.
No, unless you want to meet different set of people potentially and have maybe a different set of conversations and maybe different questions. Though both of these meetings are recorded and they will be compiled and documented with the help of QA and DAO. So that will be distributed. So if you want to catch up on what kind of like questions and things came up in the afternoon or the evening or morning session, depending on your time zone, you'll be able to skim through those as well. So you won't miss a beat. Also, we have more people joining. Good morning, good day, good afternoon.
Good epoch.
Good epoch. Maybe that's the safest choice.
I'm really pushing that. We'll see if I can get it to catch on. Of course, of all the things I'm pushing, marketing, I don't know that that's the most important, but it's the most fun.
It's on brand, Alison.
Thank you.
Awesome. We're gonna give it another minute and probably kick it off at 5 past. So if anyone has any good story to share before we run out of the 60 seconds, feel free to do so.
Hey, I will encourage everyone to check out the recording from the Cardano Catalyst Women's After Town Hall breakout room yesterday. We interviewed Lynn Gumau, who's the Vice President of Operations at the Cardano Foundation, and it was a great conversation.
Awesome. Do you have a link of it yet, or is it not up on YouTube?
It's not up on YouTube yet. I'll
Okay.
tweet it out once we get it.
Awesome. All right. Unless
I'm
there
also
are any, yeah.
I was going to say, I'm also happy to fill the silence if no one else is talking. I'm organizing a fantastic event about self-sovereign identity that I'll use to promote Prism in Switzerland. So it's the 27th of September, live in Zug. I would love it if everybody came in person to enjoy the networking happy hour as well, but it'll also be online. So I'll drop the registration link in the chat.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, Jack, I think we're good to go unless there are any objections. Let's kick it off.
Cool. Sounds good. Thanks, Danny. Let me just find my screen again. Okay. Get a zoom out of the way. Slideshow. All right. So yeah, welcome to the second workshop for dReps. We've obviously had the first one, but that was a few weeks ago now, distant memories. So I'm going to do a little recap as we get into this for a few minutes, just for those that missed the first one or didn't catch up on material before. We are joined today by 2 or 3 of us from IOG. So we're very grateful for Abby to join. It's 5 a.m. for him in Canada. So thanks again, Abby, for joining. Abby's the product manager for a lot of the work that's happening with delegation and the technical rollout of this. So he's a key, crucial part, and Abby will be taking us through a big part of this deck today. We've also got Philip Lazos, key researcher at IOG, with us as well. So any sort of more broader theoretical questions that need to come from a research position can be answered in the second half of this workshop. All right. So it is another experiment. We always like to have this sort of caveat. First time we're rolling out delegation and dReps. I'm sure it will come with some teething issues that we will iron out together as a community. So setting the tone that we're giving you today a real sort of sneak peek at the voting center that's going to be coming for Fund 10, and also obviously the dRep registration process. So it's the first time that the community is seeing some of this stuff, and we're really excited to share it today. So it wouldn't be an experiment without this slide. So I'll very, very quickly read this. Things may break, may lack documentation, differ greatly between iterations, disorient, overload, and inspire. And our goal, as always, is to provide a safe and lively environment for everyone here to explore the highest potential of human collaboration. So let's just quickly look at the agenda. So yeah, like I said, a 5-minute recap of what we did in the first workshop. And then we're going to look through the dRep registration user journey and flow. Abby's going to talk us through that. And Abby's also going to talk us through the voting center sneak peek. And then I'll briefly summarize everything in the deck, and we'll open up for questions. Meanwhile, you can ask questions in the chat, and I think Danny's going to keep an eye on that. I won't be able to see it, but we can flag up any questions after the main run through. Okay, so just a quick recap on what we talked about in the first workshop. So we've got liquid democracy framework, and we discussed about why delegation for Project Catalyst is important and why it could make sense for lots of reasons, which I'll jump into in a second. We talked about the dRep role and the expectations around what will be required of each dRep, and some of the sort of nuances around being publicly facing and all this kind of stuff. We talked about the reward mechanisms, and I just wanted to quickly touch on the rewards because there was a bit of, I wasn't necessarily 100% clear, I think, on the rewards actually, the parameters for rewards. So the voting power, as we talked about in the first workshop, is capped to 1%. And that's 1% of total voting stake. Rewards are based on 1% of delegated stake. So I'll step back again on that, I'll repeat it. So total voting stake, 1% is the voting power influence that you will have as a max. But out of all delegated stake, you need 1% of that to get your full reward, which in essence means that it's going to be a little bit easier to earn your full reward rather than trying to get that 1% of total voting stake to earn the full reward, which will be harder. So we're doing that for the first iteration of dReps. Those parameters are always up for grabs and open to change over time with community consent. So of course, we'll look at that again, but that's how we're rolling out for the first iteration. I can follow up any questions on that in the after bit. We've obviously got guardrails in place. 1% cap alludes to the guardrails. There are more of those, and I can jump into them as well. And we've got some small changes to direct voting as well. So I would encourage anyone to go back to the workshop 1 material to look at that. So a very quick recap on what is liquid democracy. I've spoken about this a lot, and I think a few of us within IOG have spoken about this a lot, but essentially it's a blend of direct representation and dynamic sort of representation that through elected officials. And we don't have any elections going on for dReps. It's an open door. Anyone can become a dRep at any time, and Abby will show a bit of how that will work and look. But essentially it utilizes both elements, and it's a very fluid framework for ensuring that power always remains with the core, and that's the individual. So moving on to why delegation and dReps, very briefly on this, we know that the sort of objective of dReps is to increase voting participation across more proposals and challenges, which is always a good thing. We get more credibility and validity when we have more people engaging with proposals and challenges. There we go. Work towards bridging voting imbalances for lower value balanced wallets. And so I'll just explain this a little bit more. We know that the whales in the ecosystem naturally have more voting power just because they have more ADA. And delegation helps bridge this gap by allowing the smaller value wallet holders to delegate their voting power to a delegate, a dRep, and then they can have, therefore, X amount more voting power. So their voice is heard a little bit louder than it would have been. As a result of all of that, it does improve decision-making outcomes. You know, more people involved, especially the lower end of where the masses are of people with lower value wallets, their voice is heard a little bit louder, which is really important. And we've got a group here today, we're creating a cohort of individuals that can work together, form policies together, and eventually, ultimately vote on proposals after having a really solid grasp of what's being put in front of the community to vote on. So that's sort of why delegation of dReps. And I'm going to step into the dRep registration flow. And Abby, you can just give me a prompt and I'll move on to the next slide. So
yeah,
I'll hang on here if you wanted to introduce yourself or do anything more.
yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Abhi. I'm I would say 2 months at IOG now, but I've been at Catalyst, around Catalyst Discord for a longer time. It's great to be here and excited to share with you what we have been working on. This is still, still design, and but we are looking to bring this to life for Fund 10, and happy to answer any questions as we go through this. Thanks. So to start off, we will obviously have a landing page, and the menu items that you see on the left-hand side may change, and there will be more. But the layout in essence will remain the same. The core call to action is being able to register to vote, being able to delegate your vote. And I believe there is additional information below, but it's a simple presentation of the core activities that you can do as part of GVC. And the interesting thing is now we have the Connect wallet here, which really opens up the possibility of a DApp-like experience. And that's what we've been working on. Okay, next. Yeah, so just a continuation here, you can see there is also a call to action here about becoming a dRep. And this is where anyone can now start applying to become a dRep. And of course, there's a process and a registration flow, which we will see, but anyone could come to this experience and register to be a dRep. Next slide. So basic information, when you click and you start the registration process, we have a guided activity flow, which will try to capture the core information that we would like to present to a user who is delegating to you. And this is all that we provide here. You can see there are some privacy concerns around email. So we've given you the option to hide your email from your profile if you do not want it to be visible. But otherwise, the layout is pretty straightforward. We are trying to go for a simple, neutral design and not, I would say, too rigid in a sense. We could go to the next slide. Yeah, and some more fields that you would fill and things you could start thinking about, right, on as to what you would like to put on your profile, your headline, your bio, and contributions. You can notice there are the character limits. So this could be something you could think about and keep ready for when we open up registrations with Fund 10. Next slide, yeah. And the last couple is more tags, and this is sort of, we will start with a base level of tags for now, which are probably generic and cross-reference very well with the tags we have in idea scale. And hopefully this helps us align interests of proposals as well as dReps and allow the delegators to pick accordingly. Yeah, next slide. Yeah, and the last, here we have the social bit, which is of course optional, completely up to you. I think this is what we are starting with on the social side, but of course, if there are other social media networks that you would like to see here, do let us know. But yeah, this is sort of where we are starting off with when it comes to socials. Next slide. Yeah, and the last bit is the privacy policy and terms and conditions. Ultimately, is a public database, so that's sort of the end of the registration flow. And at this point, when you click on complete, it would submit your application for the KYC or proof of life process.
Thanks, Abhi. Yeah, sorry, I was just going to quickly jump in and say that there'll always be the right to be forgotten and the sort of legal concerns around how we remove a dRep from, if you don't want to be a dRep anymore, how we take you away from the voting center and remove you from any search parameters. So that'll all be covered as part of the privacy policy, but also there'll be journeys for that, of course. So just to let you guys know. Right, Abhi, we'll move into the voting center.
Yeah, I see a question from Alison. So what does it mean for a wallet address to remain fixed? It's sort of the wallet which you are voting with. So we use the wallet to link your voting power to you, regardless of whether you are an active voter or a passive voter or a public dRep. So that's essentially what we use to tell the governance sidechain how to calculate your voting power. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. I have a follow-up question, but maybe I'll type it and let you answer at the appropriate time.
Is the right to be forgotten universal? For a public dRep, yes. We obviously have to work through certain other edge cases and elements. And this is still MVP, our first version. So this is definitely not the final version. So we will certainly be adding more features. Will this be open source? Can others also create an alternative front end? So to your second question, yes. We'll be releasing open API documentation as well as a package along with it where you should be able to build a GVC similar voting center experience. Whether or not the voting center itself will be open sourced, I'm not sure. I know the answer, but that's something we can take it back. So yeah, should I address your question already, Alison, or should we take that later?
Up to you. Either way, it's fine.
Does the fixed wallet become a public metric, meaning everyone will know how much ADA is in my wallet? Yes, I think essentially that's part of becoming a dRep is, I think that information will become publicly known. How much ADA you have in your wallet, because your voting power will be known, I believe, right?
Yeah, which is why we've also said that, you know, people will opt to create a new wallet, Alison, for those reasons.
Which makes sense, but then I lose the voting power of my own ADA.
The option there is to delegate to yourself.
Ah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
And that's something I think wallets, I have talked to some wallets and I've sort of planted this seed in their mind, because if I'm a wallet and I have multiple accounts, I should be able to delegate from all of my accounts to one account and then connect that account to voting center and consolidate all my voting power. But that's not really something I could solve at a dApp level. But you could still connect your other wallet in GVC, delegate to your public dRep profile, right? You could still do that. Cool.
Abby, and just could you just elaborate on the acronym GVC for everybody on the call?
Oh yeah, sorry. GVC. I apologize. V is our code name for Governance Voting Center, which is essentially what we are calling this experience overall, which includes the dRep as well as the voting elements.
Thanks. Any more questions,
All
Abby, on
right.
this, or should we move into the next?
I wasn't following all the questions. Maybe
We'll carry on
I
then,
missed
and we'll
some.
jump back into them at the end.
Yeah,
Okay,
let's
cool.
do that.
Okay, so we are, yeah, this is the, go on, Abby, I'll leave it to you, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so this is the dRep dashboard, and this will essentially show you your basic information about your current voting status now that we have your wallet connected. Show you basic information about the state of the fund cycle, the active fund cycle, and also you can view your profile, what external delegators will see, all passive voters will see, and you will also have access to the vanity link there. Any questions here on this specific? All right, I think we can keep going.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah,
All right.
new voting center.
So what we saw there was the dReps registration and dReps profile. Now we come into what the passive user is looking at. Ultimately, they are connecting to the same experience as you. However, their intent is different. Their intent is to delegate their vote to you, basically, right? So that is where the main call to action is to delegate your vote. And we can go to the next page. And this is what would drop you into the core experience, which will start presenting you with all the dReps in the database at that current point, along with all the attribution we have available from you. It is pretty straightforward, but I'll just take a second. Any questions here? Okay, cool.
If you want, I can read maybe something from the chat. There
Yeah,
was a
yeah.
question, will delegators to a dRep remain anonymous? That's the first part of the question.
I believe when you delegate with your voting key. But maybe we can just confirm this, take that on offline. I believe your delegation is not anonymous.
Yeah, I think it would work similarly like when you're staking in a way, because it's on-chain event. In that sense, what is visible on-chain is visible to everyone else. But let's double click on that. Unless, Alison, you want to elaborate on what do you mean by anonymous in that sense?
Yeah, so actually thank you. There are two questions then. The first is, as a dRep, can I identify the wallets, the blockchain wallets that would be delegating to me like a Stakepool operator can? But the second question, and I know this is a regulatory mess, but having a legacy finance background, I can't help asking if the dRep would be exposed to any regulatory issues around knowing your customer regarding the wallets that are delegating. And I am sure you can't answer that question, but I wanted to raise it as something that I would certainly think about, because I would be acting on behalf of other people. Do I need to know who they are, or, at least where they're located? Because as an American, for example, can I transact with somebody who's located in Cuba, to take an example?
Good question. So as you said, I don't think we're qualified just to give a good answer yet, but we're taking notes and putting it on on the list to discuss deeper. But as you said, like we're doing something that hasn't been really done before, so we're sort of like trailblazing a bit ahead of any fitting regulation or legal framework that we have. So, but I'm pretty sure this will be a point of a discussions going forward as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. And then Tevo asked, as a dRep, should I make a new QR code and PIN code? So let's address that, whether dReps do get in touch with QR codes or whether they have a different path. So maybe just outlining user journey a little bit.
Yeah, so the short answer is no. The idea is that you would connect your wallet using the connect wallet option on top, which would link to one of the supported wallets at launch. So it might not be that your favorite wallet is available at launch, and it really depends on the wallet, what they will be able to support. But ultimately, the idea is to move away from the QR code, PIN code style of operation and a more fluid experience overall, which is where the dApp comes in.
Awesome. And then here's a follow-up question. If I use same wallet I've always been using, I assume that's meant for voting. I don't have to re-register?
Yep, you won't have to re-register. There will be a call to action on the site for you to register to vote, which you will have to do. But once you've done that, you won't have to worry about QR code, PIN codes anymore.
I thought this was going to be part of Lace. Is that not true?
So I think what's
So-
important to just realize quickly is that Catalyst is being built wallet agnostic, and we're inviting
Okay.
all the wallets that are eager and willing to participate, which could include Lace or a number of others. We have a working group that it meets regularly on, I think, bi-weekly basis with Eternal currently. Lace is involved, the Typhon, Flint, Uroi, because essentially this effort has been open to all the community wallets as well, and they're integral in part of matching into the voting center as well. So just it's not meant to be locked for a wallet. It needs to be wallet agnostic so that the community solutions can be mapping into it.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a question, but maybe that's we can take it later, but just to highlight, how ideal will it be for a group to handle a dRep account?
I don't think there's anything stopping two users from knowing the same, wallet details. So you could, in theory, have multiple people share a wallet. That's technically nothing stopping you, right? But from a technical perspective, there's no facilitation as such, if that's what you mean. If you, in theory, imagine a multi-sig wallet, then you might be able to orchestrate a group behind the scenes, right? But for the dApp, it's always just one connected wallet, regardless of how many humans are behind that wallet.
Awesome. So that's good. Like a multi-sig could be an option. So connection is single, but then who controls the wallet, that's up to the organization of individuals or people who would have the access, and multi-sig or roundtable or other solutions could be a way. There is also a question, is there a section in the GVC for users to skip the dRep delegation? I would assume that may be related to the flow. What is the first thing that people will see when they land on the GVC? So
if we go back to the home page, so the first thing they do is to register to vote. I think it's after you've registered and connected your wallet, then you can delegate. So the register to vote button would show up immediately after you connect. That's the first thing you do. Once you've registered, then you can delegate your vote or vote yourself. So if you try to do those actions before registering, we will, of course, give you a warning that, hey, go back and register to vote first, and then come back and delegate or vote.
Awesome. Another one from Peter is, I read somewhere the future dReps had to vote in Fund 8 in order to actually become dReps. The reason was to connect this wallet, ? Or you can still have a new wallet anyway. I assume here clarification could be around the eligibility based on the past vote in either Fund 8 or Fund 9 respectively.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
my understanding is there is no, oh, sorry, Jack, I think you're better equipped.
Yeah, so it's a good, the Fund 8 was maybe more too ambitious for us, but for Fund 9, if you participate in Fund 9, that will make you eligible. So you are correct in the fact that you needed to vote in a previous Catalyst voting round. Now, if you have a new wallet connected as a dRep, your voting history won't be on that, which is fair enough. But we will, during the proof of life review, when we to make sure you're real and stuff, we will just validate that you had a previous wallet that voted in a previous fund. So it'll be part of the proof of life review.
But at that point, you can still like create a new one. Is
Yes.
that right? Okay. Okay. So I see. Okay. Understood.
So we would have
Yeah,
to
so-
identify our wallet as part of that proof of life.
Yeah, we haven't worked out the exact ask of you on this one, but yes, in short, that's how we would do it, just to make sure. But there'll be, we need to make sure it's publicly safe to do that with us in a small group of doing a proof of life. Proof of life will be a private experience; it won't be public. But nevertheless, we need to think that through a bit more.
There's another question. Do we have any rating for each dRep after each funding round?
So
No.
Yeah, sorry, Abby.
Yeah.
I said I don't think the functionality exists yet, right? I'll let you talk on that. But in terms of reputation, which is sort of what we're getting at with that, we do have part of your role as dRep requires you to provide rationale for each way you voted in a fund round. That will be publicly available, not just to the people that delegate to you. Primarily, it is for them, but it's also for your sort of wider profile that won't live on this site. And it could live in some form in the future, in some sort of metric. But yeah, there will be some level of reputation available from the first voting in Fund 10.
Thank you, Jack. There's also currently Stakepool Operators have a special process to register themselves in the Catalyst voting app, using the CLI voting tools. Will a Stakepool operator be able to connect with their pledge so the pledge counts towards voting? Abhi?
I'm not sure exactly what the term pledge is, but if you could delegate to a software wallet, you could connect the software wallet, but there is no special process for SPOs, at least currently. But we are actively working internally to figure out if there is a way to extend delegations to SPOs in a future iteration.
Yep, and I'll add to that, we're also working very closely with Martin from Atada team that caters to a lot of CLI and SPO related voting tools and manages a lot of those libraries. So he's intimately also now involved in those conversations to make sure that we plan and build what may not be necessarily for this MVP version, but in the long run, what needs to be accounted for every SPO included. So just a heads up that those conversations are important and they are currently ongoing as well. So thank you, Dimitri, for the question. How public will POL proof of life data be, and does it follow the same RTBF, right to be forgotten, aside from required date to maintain blockchain or other records?
Yeah, so it's still a process that we're trying to map out. There might be some level of KYC, but ultimately it all will follow GDPR rules and other applicable laws for data. So yes, there'll be a right to be forgotten in some form, but as Abby said, we need to work through some of the nuances with blockchain that add some difficulties into this. But we will consult with every dRep here about the proof of life process to make sure that everyone's comfortable and there's any questions before we embark on it.
All right. Yeah, and those are the challenges with the blockchain being immutable. That doesn't really mesh 100% with the traditional legacy laws that regulate the GDPR, and we'll need to navigate that together. How about another question from Doug? How about if a dRep vote in a random way? I'm not sure if you can rephrase that question. We'll get to it.
Could we move? Could I suggest that we carry on with the
yes,
deck
and I was
then-
going to suggest that, like, let's carry on, and then I'm keeping track of the questions, and then we can continue. So
Okay, great.
Yep.
I'll move us back to where we were, Abby, and I think we were just about finished with this slide.
Yeah. So I think the next experience, next page, I think shows like this is where now, as a passive voter, someone looking to delegate, you see a list of dReps. On the right side, you notice your current state, as we know from the wallet connected, and you're able to now start interacting with the dRep profiles and start deciding who you want to delegate to. Cool. So this is the basic dRep profile, which will be visible. And, of course, all the data here is based on the data we capture from you during the registration process. Other than that, the additional information you see is what we can gather from the connected wallet and whatever is safe and publicly known. Any questions here? Otherwise, we can go to the next. Yeah. So once you look at those profiles and you add a dRep, then you notice that your vote delegation, you have a change. And this is how we keep telling the user what is their current state of their delegation based on what it's like a cart experience in a sense. So I think if we go to the next slide, I think it'll take us to the managed delegation. There you go. So now you have a cart-like experience where you've added all the dReps you want to delegate to, and now you can tweak your voting power and confirm your delegations. Also, you can do basic stuff like clear selection, etc. So yeah, that's essentially how the user would construct their delegation list, and then they would confirm delegation here, which would go to the wallet and the user would sign through the wallet. That's it. So that's the basic delegation process, which a passive voter would go through. Any questions before we go ahead?
I think we can still continue. I'm marking the questions, asking for a couple of clarifications, but I would assume let's wrap up the slide deck and then we can just have a conversation.
So yeah, thanks guys. I know there's loads of questions. It's going to be like this for a while. I think lots of different questions and challenging us as well to come up with answers. So it's all good. What we've seen today is a very brief sort of snapshot really of how the voting center is going to look and feel, what it means, how dReps are going to look and feel, and how it's going to work. And I hope that it's given enough sort of enough a way to say, okay, well, this is how it's going to work. You get a confidence with how it's going to look and feel for the passive voter, but also for yourself. So in sort of summary, registering as a dRep is fast and easy, I think, as we probably all agree. It includes a proof of life review, which, like I said, we'll be defining and sharing that ahead of time. dReps profiles will be public and searchable via the new voting center. And also a dRep can use their vanity handle for easy sharing. And what I mean by vanity handle is, the LinkedIn profile, for example, you can share that LinkedIn profile and there'll be that publicly available information that you make available on LinkedIn will be similar to dRep. So voters who choose to delegate, they'll confirm their delegation via the voting center. As Abhi said, it's all a unified experience. So everyone goes to the same sort of place and has the same sort of look and feel. Post snapshot, dReps will have any personal and all delegated voting power added together, as we saw in some of the slides. So you get a combined voting power weight with your own personal stake, or if you have a new wallet, and as into Allison's example, you delegate from a different wallet into yourself as dRep, if that's the route you choose. And also just to note that delegation values do reset after each voting round. And I know we spoke about that in the first workshop. That's a parameter that, again, that can also change in the future, but for the first experiment of dReps, we're resetting the delegation values after Fund 10. So for Fund 11, you would need to go out and canvas again for delegation, but on the understanding that these things can always change as well. So yeah. The voting center is a new and fast way to delegate and become a dRep, as we've seen. You can connect your wallet via mobile and desktop. When voting becomes available through the voting center, you won't need a QR or PIN code required for the DApp. So that's a feature that we haven't seen in the slides today, and it's something we're working for Fund 10. Hopefully we can get it across, but it might not happen in time. So it's just throwing that out there, that voting will be available through the voting center as well as delegation. The Catalyst voting app is obviously going to still remain in place as the core voting experience currently, but we all know that that's got problems, and we're looking to continually improve the voting process and options. That's the summary of today, and we can go back to questions. Danny?
Yep. So there was a good question from Doug. What if a dRep votes on proposals at random without understanding what the proposal is about? This may be also alluding to, like, you know, proving the outcome of the dRep work worth reiterating.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think ultimately it comes down to reputation, and that dRep would be letting down the people that delegated to them, and it'd be hopefully evident through the rationale that they need to provide, as you sort of said. Importantly, that might trigger the fact that they may not get a delegation in the future because they behaved poorly in the first time. So that's sort of how we're looking at it now, but I do think reputation metrics will come into play in the future. Something that's a bit more easy and transparent for people to see. At the moment, the rationale, we're looking at how we're going to deploy and make publicly visible that rationale. It might be a bit crude in its first iteration.
Thank you, Jack. It was a good follow-up question from Tian. Is there any public testing ground for dRep? Sorry if I missed it. Thank you. I did allude that this is a test in a way, but if you wanted to elaborate, feel free.
Abby, I'll leave that to you, mate. That's all right.
Yeah, no, that's so we are looking to have, you know, testing environment, but we currently think that it will be only available by the time it's launched anyway. So as Danny was saying, you know, we are all in a giant experiment, and the MVP, the designs we are showing here will be the test app itself. Of course, in the future, you know, when we do future iterations, we may look at having a pre-beta version of the app available, which is isolated from production, but not for MVP. So yeah, one app for MVP.
Thank you, Abhi. Allison, does the GVC, the voting center, link the wallet address of every delegator to the profile they create on the GVC? Question mark. So if a delegator provides their real name in their profile, does that mean they're doxing their wallet address? Question mark. Opposite side of the question I asked earlier. Presumably, delegators can use an alias.
Delegators don't need to create a profile. Only dReps need to create a profile. Delegators will just connect their wallets and delegate. They have no additional user data stored on our side.
Awesome.
Is that?
I hope that, Allison, is that good answer?
Perfect. I misunderstood the slide. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you. George, could we have a private dRep in the sense it isn't shown on the list? For example, I may want my family to delegate to me, but I don't want others to do so. or for people who have multiple wallets and just want a simpler experience, but don't want to be someone who is delegated to, as another example.
Yeah, so I was alluding to this a bit earlier as well. Wallets could create an experience for you to help you delegate from one account to other accounts. Other than that, I'm hoping that in our documentation, we can provide a guide. But unfortunately, you still need to have the technical knowledge to submit a transaction to a blockchain through maybe CLI or an advanced method, or maybe something more technical. But I'm hoping that wallets can add support for this so that anyone could delegate to their other wallets. However, please note, you cannot stop anyone from delegating to your wallet, right? There's no way of stopping that.
Thank you, Abhi.
Okay, but there's a cap, right? You can't have more than
There is a cap.
1% of. Okay.
Yeah, there is a cap, yes.
So, regarding that, Danny, recently, I don't know where it was, but it seemed like I saw you say that there was a number like 3 billion ADA is currently registered to vote on idea scale. Is that
On-chain,
did I get
yes.
the
Yeah.
on-chain? Yeah. So that would imply then, like as of right now, that 1% cap would be like somewhere above 30 million, right?
So yes, the cap also is not in the number of the cap doesn't limit the number of wallets that delegate to you.
Sure.
You can over delegate to someone, but then what it does, it diminishes the rewards and it does not increase the voting power. So the saturation point.
That's something the delegating voter should know, right? Like
Yes.
this guy's over the 1%.
And I'll let Abhi clarify. I think that
Yes.
should be visible, that because we are also implementing as a part of the iteration a continuous snapshot feature, but I'll let Abhi double click on that and how people will be able to take notice of like where the specific delegator is sitting at any given point. Abhi?
Yeah, so essentially there'll be a warning if you're trying to delegate to oversaturated dRep, but we will not stop you, right? But we will warn you that you will get slash rewards because you are delegating to someone who is oversaturated. And
So how do I stop people? How do I, if I don't want to be oversaturated?
You can't stop them, but it's against their interest to delegate to you because they're wasting their voting power.
I'm not
doesn't
really
impact
worried
you.
about it.
It doesn't impact you. Your rewards are not impacted as a dRep or your voting power. So you'd still have 1% if you were at that level.
Okay.
It is part of definitely of education. And then the user interface that indicates that like, hey, the voting power is no longer tangible. So if you delegate to a dRep which is currently saturated, you are erasing your voting power because then essentially it wouldn't have an effect. So then you need to choose another dRep.
Yeah, and we are intentionally avoiding showing saturated dReps on the first result, so to speak. It's a randomized list of unsaturated dReps at that point, and allowing you to then go in and find someone, go out of your way. If you still want to delegate, of course, we can't stop you. If you really wanted to, you could skip the GVC app and delegate yourself if you really wanted to, right? So, but we will warn the user that, hey, you are delegating to someone and you will not get the rewards. It won't affect them, but it will not affect, it will negatively affect you, right? So it's not in their best interest, and I hope people would act in their own best interest.
And I'm
Crazy.
pretty sure we are in agreement that we will be observing what that interaction looks like and learn from the first iteration to see if there's opportunities to fix and
Absolutely.
fine tune going forward. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, and feedback is crucial, and
Yes.
appreciate all the feedback we can get from, especially the folks on the call, because you are really the first cohort and first group of people. So we appreciate all the feedback we can get.
Thank you, Abhi. Ferds has a question. Is the fee charged to delegators, every time they set or change dRep in the voting center?
I believe so.
If it's
I believe
confirmed,
the
right, Abhi?
delegation is on chain. I believe the delegation is on chain.
Yes.
It would, I'm not sure. Maybe we need to just confirm this.
Yeah, I'm taking definitely note.
Yeah, I mean, you could build up your list of a short list of your dReps and change them as much as you want before you've confirmed your delegation. So leading up to the snapshot, if you wanted to grab 5 people because you like those 5 people for whatever reason, and you didn't want to confirm it until the day before the snapshot, for example, you could change as many times as you want before that moment. But yeah, I think Abhi, yeah, if you wanted to reconfirm, it would cost.
Yeah, I can definitely note that.
Thank you, Abhijit. Yeah, every time you make a transaction on a main chain, that will incur transaction cost in order to move that ledger.
Yeah, that's why I thought, because I know delegation is on the main chain, so, but we will confirm for sure.
All righty. Next one from Dmitry. Could you elaborate what is the minimum amount of delegated ADA that a dRep needs to have to be active? The 1% of 1%, ... ballpark, how much is that in ADA amount right now?
So, and I'm just trying to understand the question exactly right. I'll start from the top. So the dReps rewards are based on the percentage they have of delegated stake. So let's just look at some easy numbers. If we had 1 billion total voting stake, you would need 10 million to have your 1% in total voting stake. That means, but let's say only 100 million of that 1 billion total voting, only 100 million of that was delegated. You only need to have 1 million to earn your full reward. So that's sort of how it favors the early delegation, the early group of dReps, because you don't need to have 1% of the total voting stake to earn your full reward. I can also call on Philip on the call as well to help clarify that if I've not been very clear.
I don't know what I can add. It seemed clear enough to me. If there's a follow-up, I'm glad to take it, but I think you explained it well.
When is the total delegated stake number calculated? At what point in the process?
I'll pause here because I saw another important question, just so that we get the terminology right, and that's from you and Peter combined. Before we answer that, if you allow me, could you clarify the difference between staked ADA and delegated ADA? And I think there was another term, was it the voting ADA versus delegated ADA? Just so that we clear that confusion and we have the methodology of terms right. Jack, would you like to?
Yeah, I'll give it a go because it's a bit complicated. So total voting stake is how much ADA is used to vote in a fund. So in Fund 9, for example, it might be 1 billion ADA used as voting weight to vote on proposals as a whole. Now, delegated voting stake is the proportion of that billion that was used in delegation. So that might be 100 million, or it might be, if there's 50% of people that delegated, it might be 500 million. And that's how the rewards are calculated. Your rewards are 1% of delegated voting stake. Your voting power, though, as a dRep, is based on the whole. Hopefully that's clear.
And a follow-up, what voting stake is determined at the time of the snapshot? Question mark.
Yeah, it's a good question, actually, Danny. I think at snapshot would make sense because it's locked. Nothing can change.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
each time, whatever is eligible to cast a vote is then included in a snapshot, and that's determines the voting stake, essentially the ADA that's eligible to express a vote during any given voting round. And yes, now we can go. I think Alison, you had the follow-up, and then I saw Dimitri wanted also to clarify something.
Yeah, thank you. Same question about the timing. So the total voting stake is determined at the snapshot. That makes sense. But when is that total delegated stake number calculated? Because presumably also at the snap, so everybody has to make their delegation selections before the snapshot.
Correct.
And so the voting power is determined also at the snapshot. That makes sense. So we won't know then what we need as a maximum until after it's too late to do anything about it, basically.
Yeah, well, there is, Abby, because we're looking. It talks back to about that being oversaturated and that fluidity, because some people might redelegate, undelegate, and then delegate to you on the last day, and now saturation levels are doing this with all the dReps before the snapshot.
But
and so,
sorry, just let me make sure I understand the saturation concept. Saturation is based on voting stake or delegated stake?
Voting stake.
Okay, that makes sense.
Voting, yeah, because
but how would you know? You won't know that until the snapshot.
Not for sure. No, correct. Your final percentage of voting power, let's say it's 0.8% of total voting stake, won't be really known, confirmed to you as a dRep until post snapshot.
Yeah, but
because of the fluidity. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm confused then about the saturation. You wouldn't be able to know if you're saturated until you know the total voting stake.
And I could help answer that. So what we are doing is we are going to implement a process called continuous snapshot. So we'll be pre-polling and getting data as we know from the system to show you before the snapshot as well. So it won't be a surprise to you at snapshot, but it may not be perfectly aligned because, you know, there's a lag between the delegation and the voting power calculation. So there might be a 24-hour lag or something, but you will still get an approximate idea of where you stand.
Okay, got it. That makes sense. Thank you. And then the final number is at the snapshot.
Exactly.
Okay, but if I understood you earlier correctly, then this affects the voter delegating to you more than it does you, right? That you as the dRep.
Yeah. So if someone, so like I said, nobody can stop me from delegating to you, right? From a blockchain perspective, right? What we are doing with the dRep experience is trying to promote, you know, the delegation itself to a set of publicly selected dReps, right? But nothing stopping me delegating to an arbitrary wallet on the chain.
So
Okay. Yeah.
hypothetical question to follow that up. Let's say I'm a dRep. I've got a pretty average group of delegators and I'm well below saturation. They're all happy. But right before the snapshot, a whale decides to delegate to me and it puts me over the saturation.
It doesn't make a difference to you. It makes a difference to the whale. He or she loses their voting power. It doesn't affect anyone else.
So it's the last one in who loses their voting power when they go over the saturation?
Yeah, if you knew, that's why we give you the warning while you are delegating, right? Because at that point, we already know whether you are oversaturated or not.
But you might be that good of a voter, right? They may love the way you vote so much
that they would waste their vote.
And if in my example, if the whale delegates and it's oversaturated, then does the whale not get their rewards?
Yes.
So if I have one delegator with 100 ADA is my only delegator right up until the snapshot. And I'm taking an extreme example just to make sure I understand the concept. I have 100 ADA delegated to me for the entire rolling snapshot up until 30 seconds before the actual snapshot. And in that 30 seconds, a whale with 2% of total voting stake delegates to me. What happens?
I think your voting power is still calculated at snapshot, right? So your voting power would be calculated at 1% at snapshot, and your rewards will be maxed at 1%. So the whale would lose their 1%, which they overshot, right?
Okay, but they still get their 1% rewards, voting rewards. Do they get 0 voting rewards or 1%?
I believe they would still get their 1%, and maybe Jack.
And what happens?
It's an interesting edge case, actually, Alison, because it's one wallet we're talking about. So we'd have to maybe take that. We'll take that away and just examine the edge case, because it's one wallet with more than 1%, which we'd have to proportionally do their rewards based on the stake that they had at cap. Yeah, so they'll take that away, Alison. I appreciate it's an edge case. It's a good question.
And to finish that example, the first delegator who only had 100 ADA delegating before they had any idea that the whale was going to come minutes before the snapshot, will they be impacted?
I don't believe so.
No, I don't believe so either, but we'll validate that again. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we can.
Thank you.
We can definitely take that back and maybe ensure that it's documented well in the user docs and technical docs.
All right, thank you. I know Dimitri, you were trying to get back in, please.
Thanks, Daniel. Yeah, so going back to the example of there's a 1 billion of voting stake. It means that as a dRep, your influence is maxed at 1%, which is 10 million. I get that. Okay, cool. Now, you said earlier that for you to receive maximum rewards as a dRep, you need to have a minimum delegation of 1% as well. Is that so? Does that mean that if my voting power is capped at 10 million, then I need to have at least 100K delegated in order to receive rewards, or is the 1% of rewards calculated slightly differently?
No, you got it right. So you will always need, if you are at the 1% cap, for example, of total voting stake, you're guaranteed, in fact, your full reward, because even if everybody delegated in the voting round, 100% of people delegated their voting power, you still have 1%, you still get your cap, you still get your voting reward, your dRep reward in full. Realistically, you're going to have it, or like I said, you're guaranteed to have it. If you get 1% voting power, you're guaranteed to have your dRep reward in full.
Okay, but 1% voting power is quite a lot. So if you, what is the minimum amount then they need to have? So because 1% of a billion is 100 million. So that's where your voting power is capped. You can't have more voting power than that. But it's not realistic that every dRep will get 100 million delegated. What is the lowest amount that they need in order to qualify for being paid for the work? Is it 1% of that?
It is 1% of the amount of people that delegated, the amount of ADA used in delegation out of that total. And that won't be known until the snapshots happened. So for example, in our billion example, after snapshot, we go, okay, there's 100 million of that is used in delegation. So therefore you need to have 1 million ADA in your delegation pot to get your reward. Even though you have 10 million voting power, you're going to get rewarded because you have 1% of the total delegated stake.
Okay. So realistically, with that, you're capping the number of dReps to about 100.
Yeah, and yes, it's a good question. There is a cap to sort of the max rewards available to dReps in terms of like an absolute number of dReps that will get rewarded. And Philip, I'm sorry, I'm going to call on you to help explain this because I'm not good at explaining this bit. Can you explain how I know we're talking about 150 dReps being rewarded. Can you just elaborate on that?
Yes, so to be rewarded, somebody needs to be in the top 150 dReps in terms of the delegation they have received. Once they've cleared this mark and they are in the top 150, then they will get rewarded proportionately depending on the delegation from 0 to around $3,000, which is reached, I think, when their delegation reaches 2% of the delegated stake. If I recall
1%.
correctly, 1%.
1%, yeah.
So basically, they'd have to be in the top 150 to be eligible to get rewarded. And then they'll get proportionately 0 up to 3,000, depending on the percentage of the delegated stake.
That makes sense. Thanks. That clears it up. Thank you very much.
And I'll add the caveat to the numbers of dollars. As you know, we are moving in funding the nominations into the addess, and that may impact in terms of like what it actually is. So it would be either amount if ADA maxed out at a certain amount, but again, that will be probably still need to be clarified that moving to the ADA denomination will affect that rewards payout, just like we spoke about during a couple of the previous town halls, and that needs to be hashed out exactly how that works out as well. I'll take one more question, and then I think we're going to call it a day. Where was it? Yeah, Thomas had a question. Seems like the voting rationale is not a main aspect. For example, you are dRep as long as people delegate enough to you? Question mark.
I think you're a dRep if you have one delegation of 1,000 ADA, you're a dRep, you know. It doesn't matter if you have 1 million or 1,000, you know, you're still part of the group, and that is, you know, you're involved in that way in the ecosystem. So yeah, hopefully that's a very short answer, but let me know if you need more elaboration. I suppose the work requirement, yeah, just still on the work requirements. So you are required to vote on 60 proposals at minimum and 20 challenge proposals in their current form. So that's the minimum requirements. If you do not hit those minimum requirements, no matter how much delegated voting stake you have, you will not get rewarded. And your direct voters will be rewarded, but they will be they won't. No, actually, I don't need to double check if they will be rewarded or not. Actually, I can't remember.
Yeah, we'll double check, but I think in the pilot now we said that we want that it won't be included to quote unquote punish the delegators for the mistake of a dRep. But again, looking at how the system will evolve, there may be additional caveats included in the future iterations as such.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. So just very briefly back on that point. So 60 proposals, 20 challenge proposals. Each one of those, and that's the minimum requirements. You know, we don't obviously encourage, and I'm sure many of you will do more than 60. And there'll be probably a Google form or a Google Doc that we have that we'll do a template on and provide a guide. The way you need to write a brief rationale for the way you voted on those 60 as a minimum, and that'll be publicly available to the people that delegate to you, but also more broad than that too. Addison, I've seen you. Can you vote on your own proposals? It's a good question that we had in the first workshop, actually. And I sort of did a U-turn on this because initially I was like, no, you can't. But actually there is some valid reasons why you might want to vote on your proposals with delegated voting power. For example, I can't remember if it was one of the dReps on the call made a good one, that if it's very publicly available in your bio that you are going to vote on these 5 proposals or in this way, in this challenge, and it's publicly visible, and people delegate to you knowing that information, then I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to vote how you want to vote. I just think that the point about this is transparency and conflicts of interest. So we do expect every dRep here to be open and honest about that. And I'm sure the community will call it out when it's seen that it's not open and honest or challenge it. So I think that's my answer to that. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, it's part of your marketing as a dRep. You know, I support proposals that go in this direction. I create proposals that go in this, or this is how I want to see the ecosystem built, and you guys can delegate to me. I mean, that's marketing.
Yeah. And we would just encourage everyone to be really open and honest about what projects they're involved in. We will
Sure.
have some sort of conflicts of interest guide as well that we expect people to fill that in and just make sure that everyone's informed and it's open. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Danny. Just a big thanks as well to QA DAO. They're going to be hosting all of this on their Gitbook, and they're going to be transcribing everything here. We have the second workshop later today, which will just rehash the same material we've just gone through here today, but there might be some other questions that come up that haven't come up in this call. So we will collide on that transcript and come up with a shared group of questions. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack, and everyone. Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, thanks. You too. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hey, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.